and welcome to Tuesday Tea and Chat on the 21st of September. Sorry I'm a few minutes late starting. I tried to go live via the events and it didn't seem to be working, so I had to disconnect and start as I normally would have done. So hopefully you can see this now if anyone's joining. If anyone are watching live, if you could post a comment in the sidebar, that would be amazing. So yeah, just on the side of that, you hopefully can see where you can post a message. It'd be great to hear your post. I'm just going to put a message in the sidebar now. There you go, so you know where you can post your comments. So anyway, my name's Steph, so I normally work here at Melksham Library. I've got my cup of coffee here with me today. Quite a nice mug. It's actually summer fruits rather than autumn fruits. You can see it's got red currants and strawberries. I think that's peach, but it looks a bit like an apple. So I'm having this as my autumny type mug, even though it's actually summer fruits. Anyway, so today I'm going to be sharing a number of poems on the theme of autumn or harvest. If you are watching this later on, I hope you've still got a nice drink that you can be enjoying whilst I share these poems. And I'm going to start with a poem by Clare, one of our English poets, from this lovely book that I've used before, from Poems on Nature, which is available to borrow in most of the libraries in Wiltshire. And this is Autumn Birds by Clare. The wild duck startles like a sudden thought, and heron slows as if it might be caught. The flopping crows on weary wings go by, and grey-beard jackdaws noising as they fly. The crowds of starlings whiz and hurry by, and darken like a cloud the evening sky. The larks like thunder rise and souther round, then drop a nest in the stubble ground. The wild swan hurries high and noises loud, with white neck peering to the evening cloud. The weary rooks to distant woods are gone, with length of tail the magpie winnows on. To neighbouring tree and leaves the distant crow, while small birds nestle in the hedge below. That's Autumn Birds by Clare. He talks about the crowds of starlings whiz and hurry by and darken like a cloud the evening sky. And I don't know whether any of you have seen that in nature, when you have these huge flocks of starlings, and you have the kind of the murmuration effect, don't you? Which is quite a sight to see for anybody. If you ever get a chance to see that, and it's this time of year that you might get that kind of murmuration effect of the starlings, as Clare mentioned here. So moving on, I'm doing the second poem today. Is by another well-known poet. He's actually one of the American fireside poets, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, and this poem is also about birds, but it's particularly about birds migrating at this time of year. Whereas Clare's poem, Autumn Birds, featured lots of birds of all different types, both ones that were staying in England, but also ones that are migrating. This poem by Longfellow is all about migratory birds, and it's called The Harvest Moon. So this is The Harvest Moon by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. It is the harvest moon, on gilded vanes and roofs of villages, on woodland crests and their aerial neighbourhoods of nests, deserted, on the curtained window panes of rooms where children sleep, on country lanes and harvest fields its mystic splendour rests. Gone are the birds that were our summer guests, with the last sheaves return the labouring wains. All things are symbols, the external shows of nature have their image in the mind, as flowers and fruits and falling of the leaves. The songbirds leave us as the summer's close, only the empty nests are left behind, and pipings of the quail among the sheaves. That's The Harvest Moon by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. It's a little bit more. I found that one a little bit more mournful than The Autumn Birds by Clare, because it's this feeling of almost like abandonment, like all these birds are just vacating, deserted on the curtain, the window panes, and the empty nests are left behind. So that's 2 poems to start with about birds at this time of year. So of course in autumn, traditionally this is obviously a big harvest time of the year, and I'm going to share with you now a poem moving on to more to do with the people who work the fields at this time of year. And this is a poem I'm going to share with you by Mathilda Blind. She's a German-born English poet and writer. She was born in 1841. And by the late 1880s, she had become one of the most prominent of the new women writers, because, of course, in the 1800s, women weren't obviously valued as writers, but she did rise up and became one of the prominent new writers of the late Victorian times. One of her most discussed poems was The Ascent of Men, which presents a very feminist response to the Darwinian theory of evolution. So that might be a poem that, if you haven't checked out, maybe you would like to check that out later. But the poem I'm going to read today is called The Reapers. So The Reapers by Mathilda Blind. Sun-tanned men and women toiling there together, 7 I count in all in yon field of wheat, where the rich ripe ears in the harvest weather glow an orange gold through the sweltering heat. Busy life is still, sunk in brooding leisure. Birds have hushed their singing the hushed tree tops. Not a single cloud mars the flawless azure, not a shadow moves over the moveless crops. In the grassy shallows that no breath is creasing, chestnut-coloured cows in the rushes dank stand like cows of bronze, save when they flick the teasing flies with switch of tail from each quivering flank. Nature takes a rest, even her bees are sleeping, and the silent wood seems a church that's shut. But these human creatures cease not from their reaping, while the corn stands high, waiting to be cut. And that's The Reapers by Mathilda Blind. Of course, the reaping of the crops is probably one of the first stars of harvest, and I guess starts more in maybe late summer than autumn. There's that kind of like crossover, isn't there, between late summer and autumn? But I still really like that. The kind of the busy reapers working to get the kind of harvest in. And that moves nicely onto the next poem I'm going to share with you. This is another American writer, and he was a very influential American Quaker poet, and he's called John Whittlier. And he was another poet listed as one of the Fireside Poets, a bit like Longfellow. And he wrote this. It's quite a long one. It's called The Corn Song. And again, it is. I really like this poem because it kind of tells a tale of the harvest, but it kind of looks back to the spring when the seed was first being sown, and going through to the time of harvesting it. So this is The Corn Song by John Whittlier. Heap high the farmer's wintry hoard, heap high the golden corn. No richer gift has autumn poured from out her lavish horn. Let other lands exulting glean the apple from the pine, the orange from its glossy green, the cluster from the vine. We better love the hardy gift our rugged vales bestow, to cheer us when the storm shall drift our harvest fields with snow. Through vales of grass and meads of flowers our ploughs their furrows made, while on the hills the sun and showers of changeful April played. We dropped the seed, O hill and plain, beneath the sun of May, and frightened from our sprouting grain the robber crows away. All through the long bright days of June its leaves grew green and fair, and waved in hot midsummer's noon its soft and yellow hair. And now with autumn's moonlit eves its harvest time has come. We pluck away the frosted leaves and bear the treasure home. There, richer than the fabled gift Apollo showered of old, fair hands the broken grain shall sift and knead its meal of gold. Let vapid idlers loll in silk around their costly board. Give us the bowl of samp and milk by homespun beauty poured, where the wide old kitchen hearth sends up its smoky curls. Who will not thank the kindly earth and bless our farmer girls? Then shame on all the proud and vain, whose folly laughs to scorn the blessings of our hardy grain, our wealth of golden corn. Let earth withhold her goodly root, let mildew blight the rye, give to the worm the orchard's fruit, the wheat field to the fly. But let the good old crop adorn the hills our fathers trod. Still let us, for his golden corn, send up our thanks to God. That was the Corn Song by John Whittlier, who was an influential American Quaker poet. And as I said, I really like that poem because it just takes through the kind of from the springtime. It talks about when the changeful April played and the sun was shining. That's when we dropped the seed around May time, and we were frightening the crows away. And then, of course, in the bright days of June, the green shoots are growing up. So, and then it takes you to autumn time when it's time to harvest. So I do like that one because of the tale it tells throughout the growth of the corn. And it ends up with the giving thanks to God. And of course, autumn, particularly in America, was obviously a time where they celebrate their Thanksgiving. Harvest time was often a time to be thankful for the produce that had grown in various cultures and communities. And so I'm going to share the next poem with me, and it's tied in with the lead up to Thanksgiving Day. So it's another poem by an American writer. It's called Paul Dunbar. And Paul Laurence Dunbar, it was his parents were actually former slaves, and he was one of the first influential black poets in American literature. He was acclaimed for his dialectic verse, and that's a type of writing where it kind of gives a sense of place for instance, where the writer's from. So often they're written and delivered in the dialect that the writer was from. So I'm going to attempt to read this in the dialect that it was written in, and so hopefully I do it some justice, so do forgive me if I mispronounce some of the words. And this is Signs of the Times by Paul Dunbar. Air a getting cool and cooler, frost a coming in the night. Hickna nuts and walnuts falling, possum keeping out of sight. Turkey strutting in the barnyard, nary step so proud is he. Keep on strutting, Mr. Turkey, yo do know what time it is. Cider press commence a squeaking, eating apples stowed away, chilling, swamming round lake hornets, hunting eggs among the hay. Mr. Turkey, keep on gobbling. Ah, the geese are flying south. Dat bird do know what's coming. Effie did he'd chef his mouth. Pumpkin getting good and yellow. Make me open up my eyes. Seems like it's a cock looking at me. Jess a lying, da saying pies. Turkey gobbler gwine row blowing, gwine round gibbon sass and slack. Keep on talking, Mr. Turkey. You ain't seed no almanac. Farmer walking in though to barnyard, seeing how things is coming on, sees of all the fowls is fattening, good times coming, shows you barn. Hires that turkey gobbler bragging, then his face breaking a smile, never mind ye sassy rascal, he gwine nab ya at a while. Champing suet in the kitchen, stoning raisins in the hall, beef a cooking for the mincemeat, spices ground, I smell 'em all. Look hiya, turkey, stop that gobbling, you ain't learned the sense of fear. You old fool, your nake's in danger, do you know Thanksgiving's here? And that's Sign of the Times by Paul Laurence Dunbar. Quite a fun poem, I find. Because it's talking about, isn't it, looking in the farmyard, focusing on Mr. Turkey, who's just gobbling and strutting around, gobbling and getting fatter and fatter. And of course, the poet is saying, "Don't you know what time it's coming? You know, you'd stop eating if you knew what was coming, because obviously Thanksgiving is here." So, and we all know what they serve at Thanksgiving traditionally. But yeah, I do like that. They've got the cider press squeaking. You've got the pumpkins getting yellow. So yeah, lots of lovely signs and imagery of autumn in that poem. I do enjoy that poem. So I'm going to now move on, because this is a short one I'm going to share with you now. So harvest time was a time when obviously it was a time often, hopefully if the harvest was good, it was a time of plenty, a time for thanksgiving and thanks for, but also a time for sharing. Some of you might remember at harvest festivals when we were growing up, where people could share their food produce with other people. Maybe people were less well off. I think in our times at the moment, a lot of people now, harvest festivals, often they collect and make collections for food banks, so less of the kind of fresh fruit and veg kind of produce, but maybe just sharing some of our bought produce from supermarkets with food banks. But I'm going to share this one. So this is actually a short one by Dora Goodale, and her sister Elaine were American poets from Massachusetts, and this is just a short one called The Feast Time of Year. And as I say, it's a time it's a time of feasting, and it's a time maybe of sharing what we have. This is the feast time of the year, when plenty pours her wine of cheer, and even humble boards may spare to pour a kindly share, while bursting barns and granaries know a richer, fuller overflow, and they who dwell in golden ease, blessed without toil, yet toil to please. This is the feast time of the year, when plenty pours her wine of cheer, and even humble boards may spare to pour a kindly share. I think that's a really nice one by Dora Goodale about it being a feast time of year and a time of sharing. So I like that one. Now we're getting towards the end, so I've got one more poem I'm just going to share with you before we finish. It's another poem by one of our classic English poets, John Keats, born in 1795, and this is a poem, it's his ode to autumn by John Keats, and this is going to be, I'll say, the last poem I'll share with you today. I hope you've enjoyed some of the poems. I hope they've given you something to think about, and obviously we'll be having another teen chat in 2 weeks' time, and it should be with Pete Waterman. So do look out for the adverts for that. But I'm going to finish with To Autumn by John Keats. Season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun, conspiring with him how to load and bless with fruit the vines that round the thatch eaves run, to bend with apples, with mossed cottage trees, and fill all fruit with ripeness to the core, to swell the gourd and plump the hazel shells, with a sweet kernel to set budding more, and still more later flowers for the bees, until they think warm days will never cease, for summer has overbrimmed their clammy cells. Who hath not seen thee oft amid thy store? Sometimes whoever seeks abroad may find thee sitting careless on a granary floor, thy hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind, or on a half-reaped furrow sound asleep, drowsed with the fume of poppies, while thy huck spares the next swathe and all its twined flowers, and sometimes like a gleaner thou dost keep steady thy laden head across a brook, or by a cypress with patient look thou watchest the last oozings hours by hours. Where are the songs of spring? Ay, where are they? Think not of them, thou hast thy music too, while barred clouds bloom the soft dying day, and touch the stubble plains with rosy hue. Then in a wailful choir the small gnats mourn among the river sallows borne aloft, or sinking as the light wind lives or dies, and full-grown lambs loud bleat from hilly bourne. Hedge crickets sing, and now with treble soft the red-breast whistles from a garden croft, and gathering swallows twitter in the skies. And gathering swallows twitter in the skies. And that's by John Keats, and that's To Autumn. and it finished with gathering swallows twittering in the skies, which was quite good. That takes us back to the first poems I shared with you at the start of this, where I shared with you Autumn Birds by John Clare and The Harvest Moon about migratory birds. So we started and finishing with birds, and all the activity we have with birds at this time of year. I hope you've enjoyed those poems. Please do comment or message, or write in if there's any poems that you particularly enjoyed, or if there's any poems that you'd really like to hear from us over the coming months. We're still planning to do fortnightly tea and chat sessions, so do watch this space, and I hope you can join us for some future poems. Anyway, thanks again for joining me. I'll finish off my coffee now, which is rather lovely to have. You take care of yourself and enjoy autumn, and have a good rest of the week. Thanks. Bye.